To me, the two most interesting characters in the history of the world are Hitler and Jesus. There's good and evil in everybody. That's a truth that I believe, that there is good and evil in every human being, every single one of the people out there. And me. Hello, motherfucker.
Hey, Mo.
How you doing?
Good.
I don't admire Hitler at all. You know, I don't want stupid people to think that I'm praising Hitler, but he was an example of extremes. Nice cup of rich, hot, steaming, delicious, flavorful black coffee, Mo. As far as the 20th century is concerned, Hitler was evil incarnate. But I know a lot about Hitler that doesn't add up to that. Doesn't mean that our judgment of him should change. It should not. Good to the last drop. What's interesting to me is that Hitler took an entire race of really intelligent, hardworking, sometimes brilliant people down to hell with him. In the same way that Jesus lifted up people's spirits. That's a subject that interests me still.
Did you get your coffee?
Oh yes, rich, hot, steaming, delicious, flavorful, and black, as usual. Are you ready?
I am. Shall we start?
Let's do it. An archbishop recently said to me, the devil also had goodness. The devil was a creature of God, but he went bad. I've had evil thoughts. I've had good thoughts. It's a constant struggle for humanity, for every human being to have their goodness overcome their dark side. Is there really such a thing as demonic possession? I don't know that.
I pray. I have spiritual training, so I felt
Like Father Barry.
I had equipment to deal with it. I think the reason why the film is so successful and people get so scared is because it starts on a very real level, so that the audience connects with the people, they know who they are, and it's going along at a very, like a normal reality. And it's step by step, something happens to pull the audience in to the darkness, so that when we're into the unbelievable, they're believing it because it's unbelievable to us, and we've taken all of the steps there. I'm off horror films all the time. Everybody who makes a horror film sends me a script. And they all make the same mistake. They don't start in a reality base and get the audience involved emotionally in that. And it's a big mistake. If you just start out with a horror, everybody goes, ha ha ha, they laugh at it.
If I were to work on that subject matter, I would have probably tried to deal with evil through metaphor and because it is part of life. Billy didn't do that. He just went for it. He didn't mince around. He shows it, and he shows it over and over again in the most direct possible way. You know, the little girl's head goes all the way around, and you see it.
With the Father and the Holy Spirit.
In Billy's film, it's not implied, it's shown.
Damien!
He doesn't philosophize about evil. He shows you evil.
Oh, look down in pity.
You killed your mother.
Your servant.
You left her alone.
It might be a bit vague, but my favorite scary movies are not the ones that are the scariest necessarily. I mean, that's a very scary movie, but they are the ones where I like being with the characters, really. Only a certain amount of the movie is going to be the really terrifying parts. The rest of it is pulling you in, keeping you close to them, whatever the world and the atmosphere of the movie is. Just to live in the movie. You suddenly just feel like this is really happening, which has always been the thing in the Friedkin movies. They're built in something very real.
It legitimatized the horror film in a very new way. It applied a certain kind of psychological rigor and verisimilitude to a subject that was always perceived to be lurid and comic booky. And Billy applied that to the genre, and it was never the same. Analogies are silly most of the time, but what Star Wars was to the science fiction movie, in a lot of ways, The Exorcist was to the horror film.
The Exorcist was that first movie that was so incredibly popular that people went to the movie theater and stood in line, not for the next show, and not even for the show after that, but for the show after that. Because it was people needed to see The Exorcist, because there was like nothing they'd ever seen before.
Within a few hours, a whole day's seats are gone.
That film at the time was so frightening. I mean, an entire generation was given a new breed of nightmare.
Halfway through the movie, when Regan goes into the hospital, I passed out. I literally fainted in the seat, sitting between two football players. I was kind of overwhelmed by this girl and what was happening to her in this film. And the whole Catholic thing was working its magic on me too.
My mother had no problem with me seeing anything. I asked her about it, and she goes, Quentin, you're smart. There's nothing that you're gonna see in a movie that's going to mess you up. It's a movie. But The Exorcist was the first film in '73 she forbade me from seeing.
I did as much research as I could. At the time I made the film, there were only 2 reported cases in the 20th century by the Catholic Church of demonic possession in this country. There was the 1949 case of a 14-year-old boy in Cottage City, Maryland, that Blatty based his novel on. And he wrote it as a novel because he couldn't get any information from the Catholic Church. And the other case was a case in a small town in Iowa, a little town called Erling, E-A-R-L-I-N-G, Iowa, of a woman in 1922. I talked to the aunt of the boy who was possessed, and she told me some stories that were beyond even what was in the novel, and I put them into the film, like the furniture moving and trapping her in a room. To what extent it is what happened in the actual case, I just don't know.
It's the power of Christ that compels you. The power of Christ.
When they got to the exorcism, Max blocked on the line, the power of Christ compels you. I couldn't remember it. He just blocked. And they shot it over and over and over and over. And Max was an atheist.
The power of Christ compels you.
Did Billy ever tell you that? It just wouldn't come out of his mouth. And Billy said to me, on a list of 100 things that could go wrong in this shooting, number 100 would be Max von Sydow blocking on a line. He finally got it, but it was mysterious.
It's God himself who commands you.
I made The Exorcist as a believer. Everyone in my family in Chicago was Jewish, and so I had to have a Hebrew school education, and it was forced on me. You know, you had to do it. I know a lot of Yiddish slang, but I don't remember Hebrew because I didn't absorb the teaching. I now read the New Testament. I seldom read the Old Testament. I find the Old Testament a lot more fanciful. Both my parents came from the Ukraine, and they came over in what we call was steerage. That means they were in the hold of a ship. At the age of 3, they were escapees, but they quickly assimilated and became Americans. I had a very happy childhood, even though we were extremely poor. But I didn't know we were poor because all of the people who lived in my apartment building lived the same way. My father didn't make a lot of money. He made $50 a week at the most. In a lot of countries, that is a lot of money. In America, it's poverty. I loved my mother and father. I thought my mother was, if she was Catholic, she would be a saint. She would be nominated for sainthood. I never heard her say a bad or a negative word about anybody. She was very loving and protective of me. My father worked many long hours, and every day I couldn't wait for him to come home at night. And when he was off on the weekends, he and I would play. And he was a semi-professional softball player. We did a lot of things together. Where I grew up on the north side of Chicago, you could go out and play in the streets.
The whole neighborhood was alive. Billy Friedkin was a wild guy in some ways when we were in high school together. I remember being in one class where it was a German teacher, very strict, and there was a student up in front of the classroom reciting something, and suddenly a group of masked marauders with hoods on their heads so you couldn't see their faces charged in, grabbed the kid who was speaking and kidnapped him right from the front of the classroom. And he went out screaming and we all sat there. Now, what was that? What just happened? Of course, Billy Friedkin was the leader of these, he was a prankster.
Cameras into your first positions. Roll film.
By the time I came of age to work, I had an early entry-level job in television. And television was very new in people's homes then, and my folks didn't understand what I was doing in television. I was just in the mailroom, you know, for almost 2 years until I moved up in television. And that's how I started. There were no schools then that taught television production. You learned on the job. You had an entry-level job in the mailroom, in my case, and some of the best film directors of the 60s and 70s who started in the 50s as live television directors in America. This is a greater honor to me than an Academy Award. Yes, yes, really. I wasn't interested in filmmaking when I started in television. Keep an eye on this for me so it doesn't get graffiti, will you? Anna Karina this year. Wow. Diane Curris. This is fantastic. I would have continued to do that until I saw Citizen Kane when I was 21. And then my ambition to become a film director took hold. The day I saw Citizen Kane, I thought, my God, the power of film. The power of film to go so far below the surface of a human life or human lives.
In the 60s, I had heard of Billy because he made a film that saved a man's life, and I was extremely impressed with the notion that a film could actually save a life. He had made a documentary called The People versus Paul Crump.
For 9 years, Paul Crump has tried to tell his story. Either nobody listened, or nobody cared, or nobody believed.
Fate caused me to go to this one party on one particular Friday night. It was 150 people in the room. I was hiding in a corner like this, trying to pretend I wasn't there. And I had a drink. I'm standing there with a drink like an idiot. And there was a man standing next to me with a priest collar. He was the Protestant chaplain at the Cook County Jail. I didn't know what to say to him. What would you say to the guy? He says, I work on death row where they execute people in the electric chair. Father, have you ever encountered anyone who you thought was innocent on death row? This is the question that came out of my mouth. And he said, there's a guy now. He's an African American. His name is Paul Crump.
I confessed, and you would confess, and anybody else that was in the position that I was in would confess.
And as a result of that, you've spent 9 years in this jail.
Right.
Is that right? Waiting to be executed.
Right here, and no one believing a fragment of what I say.
I think he was convicted of a murder, and the film was so powerful and the film was so effective that literally the case was reviewed, and ultimately the man was not executed.
He told me to stop praying. He says, you black son of a bitch, so what do you know about God? You should be in the jungle.
It was shown to the governor of Illinois, whose name was Otto Kerner, and he sent me a very brief letter saying that after seeing my film, he decided to spare Paul Crump's life. And he was finally released to the custody of his sister.
I was so impressed that a film could save a life that when I finally met Billy Friedkin, I was very admiring, and he was someone vaguely my age, so it was doubly impressive.
When I made The People versus Paul Crump, a documentary that was not very well made, but had the effect of saving a man's life, I thought, what a great and powerful medium film is. And then I went to Hollywood. And then I went to Hollywood, and I was completely dispelled of that notion. I didn't realize that I could use a documentary style in film until I saw the film by Costa Gavras called Zed. How many of you have seen that? Great. And that was the film that said to me, it is possible to use documentary technique in a fictional story.
Maybe if documentaries had been more possible, if they had been showing them more, he would have been one of the great documentarians. His films have an element. French Connection is shot with you might say, a cinema verite documentary kind of quality.
Police emergency, I need your car.
What you see in that chase happened. That happened frame by frame.
I filmed this chase in the French Connection with real cars and real people walking on the streets. If you cleared the streets of New York, it wouldn't be New York. It was dangerous, too dangerous. I wouldn't do it today, but that's what I had in mind then. I had in mind a chase that reflected the street life of Brooklyn.
It was decided that we were just going to get in the car and whatever happens, happens. And of course, I got in the car with Bill Hickman. Bill Hickman was going to do the driving. Now, the cameraman, Billy Friedkin, did not allow him to do the filming because he was married, I don't know any part of it. All I know is that Billy Friedkin did the filming in the car. Before we were going, I'll never forget this, Bill Hickman was smoking a cigarette, and it was in the ashtray. And Billy got into the car, and he said to Bill Hickman, "You haven't shown me shit yet. This better be good. We're only going to be able to do this once. Whatever you've done before is shit. I really want to see what you can give me here." With that, Hickman is lighting up a second cigarette while the first one is in the ashtray, still going. And I just said to myself, I'm going to die. I'm going to die here, you know? And so we got out there, and Bill Hickman, he let it go.
He just stole those shots, man. They went through New York on a Sunday morning, hell-bent for disaster. I mean, in many cases, you're just lucky that people didn't get hit by cars.
I think that's the thing, is that because the films are so real, I don't think they date. William Friedkin did a 45th anniversary screening at the Chinese. I was there, and it was so loud and so forceful, it just kind of wiped the floor with a lot of contemporary movies. Even today, it still looks great. Like, I think the thing is that the way that Hollywood makes movies has changed so much that French Connection looks like a breath of fresh air now.
I had this story, which had taken place 10 years before, and I knew the two cops. When I met them, I was more interested in making a film about them than about the story. They were kind of unique to me. They were the first good cop, bad cop that I met or was aware of. So I had the ambition to capture their dynamic on film with two actors. And then I wanted to show another side of New York City that I had not seen on film. The darker side of New York City life.
It was estimated that there were 250,000 heroin users in the city of New York. And don't forget, these people had to make it every day. You know what I mean by that? So the crime was just totally and completely through the roof. And Billy had said to me, we would like to see how you toss somebody. Toss meaning how do you search them? So put them in a car and we rode through the streets. And so we began to stop people on the street and toss them, if you will. How we would search them.
Oh, man, who are you? Dick Tracy, somebody. I said I was clean.
I'm not gonna get stuck, am I?
No, I said I'm clean, didn't I?
If I do, you know what happens.
Yeah, I said I'm clean. Okay.
Billy absorbed everything. And he couldn't look, he couldn't see enough, he couldn't ask enough questions.
To me, he was, part of how I was introduced to New York was through the French Connection. Part of how I was introduced to LA is through To Live and Die in LA.
When you look at French Connection, you feel New York. When you look at To Live and Die in LA, you feel LA, and you feel it in that period. It does serve as kind of a time capsule. And I think it's because Billy is very invested in entering these worlds, and then with the things he learns, he gets details. It also takes his story someplace else that he can't take it until he experiences those worlds.
585, your message, okay. 585, your message, okay.
I called up Billy and I said, if you can come up to the precinct, I'm going to take a guy down. Hopefully his friend is there with him. He used a shotgun, and the shotgun took out the daughter, the father, and I'm sorry to say, a 4-year-old kid in the crib. And Billy came up exactly with me. I went down, with my partner. I went down with Billy, and I set a fire in the hall with the garbage cans, and people were screaming, it's fire, it's fire. And of course, the guy came out, and I got him without any trouble at all. And Billy was right there. And in fact, Billy put the handcuffs on him. And we brought him back up, and I charged him, with a triple homicide. In the end, let me put it this way. In the end, Billy Friedkin was a narcotic detective.
Muldrick. You shot Muldrick. The son of a bitch is here. I saw it. I'm gonna get him.
And the ending of the French Connection film, it's virtually a documentary of that case. If you were to talk to Sonny Grasso today, who's still alive, and he was the cop played by Roy Scheider in the film, if you asked him right now, if you picked up your cell phone and called Sonny Grasso, and you said, Sonny, how accurate is the French Connection movie to the case that you broke in 1961, he would say about 95% accurate. Now, the case took place 10 years before, over a 10-month period. The movie runs 100 minutes and was made 10 years later. But in the mind of the actual character, it's 95% accurate. So in that sense, I think it's probably not a bad film.
for the French Connection, William Friedkin was awarded with an Academy Award, an Oscar. And in 1973, he formed a production company called the Directors Company, together with Peter Bogdanovich and Francis Ford Coppola. And The Conversation is one of the films that they produced.
Dear Francis, keep this wire with you throughout production. 1, stay within budget at all times. 2, finish on schedule. Don't let the actors improvise, especially Hackman. 1, think commercial. Remember, it's my money you're spending. That's a good letter.
That's very much him.
Ironically, the conversation did come in on budget and stuff, but it wasn't a commercial film. And I think Gene Hackman told me that on the French Connection he was working, in the first few days he wasn't sure what he was doing. He wore a funny hat.
Cold, depressing winter.
Hadn't found his character yet. And then one morning in the cold in New York, there was, like the table with coffee and donuts. And he took a cup of coffee and he took a donut and he dipped the donut in the coffee and took a bite and threw the donut away. And he heard a voice saying, "That's him." And he looked and it was Billy Friedkin. This guy was the kind of person who would take one bite of the donut and throw it away. And Gene told me that made the character in his mind.
The ideal situation for me as a director is to simply make a suggestion to an actor and watch what the actor does with that. And that was the entire cast of The French Connection, the entire cast of The Exorcist, the entire cast of Bug, the entire cast of Killer Joe.
For better or worse, sometimes, he does create a vibe on the set.
Where'd you get those?
That's not Hansel's dick.
He's almost like a method director, I would say. I mean, at the beginning of my character, we were all lovey-dovey and everything was sweet. And I noticed as my character started, you realize she was a little duplicitous, and he started just treating me like shit on the set. And at first, I didn't quite understand what was going on. And then, of course, later on, I bumped into Sherry, like right after we had wrapped, Billy's wife. And she was like, "Billy loves you." And I'm like, "Really?" Like, I thought he kind of hated me. And of course he called, he's like, "Darling, I love you. I was just trying to get that performance out." And you realize he just becomes part of the atmosphere.
If you lie to me, it'll be the last lie you ever tell.
Rex.
Rex?
It's Rex.
Who?
Rex.
Correct.
Answer, please.
Whether you're aware of them or not, it's best to never state your intention. It's best to have people wondering a little bit. Because I know from my end, I'm better when I'm not sure. If you're intending to do that, wait, where's the line drawn between you and the character? It's great to not know that with the person as an actor. And a good director like Bill's not gonna ask, because he knows if you say these things out loud and state your deliberation or state your intention, you kill the magic, or whatever it is.
Peter, are they bad? Get off!
He's always looking for people to put themselves out there, There's no holding back. There's no, just charming your way through the scene. You've got to go to the dark place, He's very aware of when something is phony,
Flying the drone.
He really does what he needs to get a great scene out of you. Sometimes he can be quite frightening, and sometimes he can be unbelievably nurturing, and sometimes he gets very involved. Like when I had to do a nude scene, he actually dropped his trousers in front of the cast and crew, which was pretty amazing, yeah.
Stop. Take off your socks.
It's like, are you nervous about taking your clothes off? Like, everyone's taking their clothes off. Here, I'll take my pants off. It's like, he's just like, he's in it. He's just passionate, and he expects people to give like 200% because he's giving 200%.
Good. Come on out of there. This is not a mark. There are no marks.
I try not to rehearse with actors as though they're giving a performance. I'll very often, if they're playing a cop, I'll send them out with real cops or real priests, as I did with Jason Miller and Max von Sydow. So I'll talk to them before we ever get to the set. And then I'll stage it with the director of photography, work out how the lighting's gonna be and if the shot's gonna move or if the actor's gonna move.
It's good, Ann. Yeah, it's perfect.
I'll work all that out and then shoot it. There's no rehearsal. Rehearsal is for sissies. Rehearsal is for dummies.
Catch the train, pass it.
And I don't know if Caleb told you, but I'm a one-take guy.
Billy would do very few takes. I mean, we rarely did more than one take. And I've worked with directors, you know, who do 40, 50 takes. There are great filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick who do 100 takes, and then there are people like, you know, Sidney Lumet and Billy Friedkin who do one take and make really wonderful movies. I think for Billy, you know, he likes the challenge of that. And when actors would want to do another take, he would oftentimes, you know, say, well, okay, he'd sort of give in and, you know, do another take, and then he'd go, okay, just print the first one.
You know, Bill's got this thing one take. And I remember when he said that, my blood pressure went up immediately. I was like, but very immediately, before I could even exhale, I was like, well, that's fucking fantastic. Okay, then there's really no fucking around. You just let it rip from take one and that's it. So it actually was cool to have that sort of pressure put on that actually made it no pressure at all, because it's like, you only got one.
It's kind of like real life. It's like meeting someone for the first time. You only do that once. So if this is your one or maybe two takes at it, fucking bring it, you know?
We were shooting in a bar in San Pedro. We had what we were supposed to say. We sort of talked about that. And then he said, all right, let's do a rehearsal. Go ahead. And they gave us an action. And we walked out the door and we walked across the parking lot. And we were talking. And then I jumped in the car and he walked out of the frame. And Billy said, cut. He said, that's it, we got it, we're done. And we didn't even know we were shooting. We didn't even know we were filming anything.
They do it. Okay, let's move on. And so, wait a minute, huh? What? There was a reflection. I said, I don't care. No one's looking at that. If they're looking at that, we're dead. We once made a shot, I think it was in Killer Joe, where a car pulls away in the foreground, revealing somebody. And Caleb had a reflection of the camera crew in the car. But the camera's moving so fast, and he said, wait, we gotta do it again. There's a reflection. I said, Caleb, everybody knows that you need a camera to make a picture. If there's a camera reflected in the car, you know, no one will be surprised. They're not thinking about that, who cares? We didn't do it again. But the normal way in filmmaking, let's do it again until it's perfect. However, I'm not looking for perfection in the films that I've made. I'm looking for spontaneity.
A lot of people say when it comes to directing that 90% of directing is casting. And is it 90%? No, but you know, it's 80%. It really is 80%. It is, you know, these are the actors that are going to take your movie all the way. And when you cast a movie exquisitely, like the way The Exorcist is cast, then it's, you know, it's just perfect.
You can tell he's reaching for something deeper by the kind of cast that he wants to use. Exorcist is a perfect example of that.
Max von Sydow, he was the best film actor in the world at the time, and he had the dignity of spirit that conveyed Father Merrin better than anyone that I could think of. Ellen Burstyn understood the story, grew up a Catholic, had left the Catholic Church but understood it.
My training is to be real. That's what Strasberg taught, and that's what I learned from him, how to be real in the fiction. And that was Billy's background too, so we were really on the same page.
The part of the young priest, Jason Miller, we had cast an actor named Stacy Keach for that role. And then one day I was in New York and I saw a play that was written by Jason Miller, who was only a part-time actor. He was actually a milkman in Flushing, New York, delivering milk.
We went to see Jason's play that was appearing on Broadway at the time. Do you know the name of it? I can't think of it.
A wonderful play called That Championship Season that, to me, it reeked of lapsed Catholicism. And I said to my casting director, I'd love to meet this guy. I just want to talk to him. She set up a meeting with me at my hotel room, and it was a terrible meeting. And we cast Stacy Keach, and I went back to Hollywood to start preparing the picture. I get a call from Jason Miller. He was in New York. And by now he's won the Pulitzer Prize for his play. And he said, hey, you know that book you were talking to me about, that exorcist book? Yeah. He said, I am that guy. I said, really? He said, yeah, that's me. That's my life. I studied for 3 years to be a priest at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. I had a crisis of faith. I dropped out of the church. I said, that's really interesting. He said, I'm telling you, this guy is me. I said, well, it isn't you. It's Stacy Keach, because we've hired him to play the part. Now, that little voice that appears in my head sometimes said, go along with this guy. Maybe it's a joke, but I like jokes. I said, can you get a plane tomorrow and get out here tomorrow night? He said, fuck no. He said, I don't fly. I'm not going to get in an airplane. It'll take me a week to get out there on a train. I said, you're really out of your fucking mind. So he took the train and came out. And I had Ellen Burstyn.
Jason did a screen test, and that I did with him in California.
I had just 2 chairs, and I took a shot over her shoulder on Jason Miller while she interviewed him. And then I made a tight close-up of him just saying the Mass. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Don't rattle through the Mass the way we hear it in churches today all over the world. Say the words as though you're saying them for the first time.
Remember also, O Lord, thy servant Mary Caris, who has gone before us with the sign of faith and sleeps the sleep of peace.
And then the next day, the Rushes come out. And I see them with the heads of Warner Brothers and with Bill Blatty. And he just popped off the screen. And I said to all the people in the room, we got to pay off Stacy Keach, and I'm going to hire this guy. They said, you're what? Fuck you. We're not doing it. We're not giving the lead to this fucking amateur. I said, that's it, folks. You want me to do this picture? That's it. He's the guy. It was a gift from the movie God. acting and filmmaking are both professions. It's a job. Some schmuck who sits around here and says, I'm an artist, is fucking crazy. Out of this work, there can come art. Of course there has, and there can. It's rare. Fellini was an artist. Certainly Antonioni. H.G. Clouseau was really an artist, as was Fritz Lang and Charles Chaplin and Buster Keaton, and a handful of actors. No, I don't have a perception of myself as an artist. That's the beginning of the end of a career, when you start to believe that you're an artist. And instead of just striving for the utmost professionalism in the telling of a story.
Anytime a director tries to make a big movie that's difficult and that's challenging, there's always those three movies: Sorcerer, Apocalypse Now, and Guerri, The Wrath of God. Looking at you, telling you, no, you're just making a movie. You know, yeah, that might be a little rougher, and it might be taking you a long time to do it, and maybe you're fighting for the time to do it and do it right, like say something like when I do Kill Bill. Nevertheless, I'm not William Friedkin in Brazil or wherever the hell he was, shooting in the jungle, doing Sorcerer.
You gonna tell me where I'm going?
I swear to Christ, I don't know.
Sorcerer is, to me, one of the greatest movies ever made.
It was the most difficult thing I've made. It was shot in a number of places, but especially in the Mexican jungle and the Dominican Republic, in the poorest village of the Dominican.
You had the feeling, we'll never get a chance to do something like this again, maybe. Who knows? So let's just go for it.
Para presentarnos hoy Sorcerer, tenemos el inmenso placer y el honor de tener a su director con nosotros. Os pediría un gran aplauso y una bienvenida para el gran maestro del cine, el señor William Friedkin.
For me, it is the most important film that I've made, and the one that I hope to be remembered for, if I'm remembered at all. Most of you who were not even born when I made this film, let's see. So nobody here was born when I made this film.
Sorcerer is the second adaptation of a novel by Georges Arnaud. In 1953, Clouseau brought to the screen for the first time an adaptation with the title Wages of Fear.
I never considered it a remake, and I still don't. There must be well over 50 million productions of Hamlet since it was first written in 1601. So any version of Hamlet is not a remake. It's another version, another vision. But I must tell you, Wally and I created all new characters and all new situations. The only thing that's the same is the essential core of 4 guys driving 2 trucks of dynamite to an oil well fire. And they're 4 desperate guys who are doing this as a kind of a last chance.
What are you gonna do with all that money, you hump? Talk to me. What are you gonna do?
Good.
Blame.
So it's a movie about attempted redemption, but they won't actually succeed because fate doesn't necessarily favor redemption. And he bought into it. It was a choice, and a daring one. And, you know, he was right there. He wanted to do that. And we decided on picking characters that were kind of challenging, you know. I said, what about a guy who's a terrorist? Everybody should have something in their past that's unforgivable.
Atmosfere cupe, disperate, persone proprio ai limiti della pazzia. È un film bellissimo. C'è un'ansia poi che ti prende da quando comincia il film, un'ansia che non ti lascia mai.
The bridge scene is just one of the great suspense moments in cinema. It's one of the great filming of sequences, the imagery itself, the editing.
It wasn't done through special effects. It wasn't fake. It was by really doing it. Both Apocalypse and Sorcerer were made at a time when if you wanted to show something extraordinary, you had to do something extraordinary and photograph it.
How in the actual hell did you shoot the bridge crosses?
With great difficulty. One shot at a time. The bridge had hidden beneath it a hydraulic system so that the trucks were attached to the bridge from below where you couldn't see it. But many times both trucks fell into the water and we had to pick them up. I was in the truck when it went into the water.
I'm a great jogger. No matter what the picture was, I would jog. I'm doing Sorcerer with Roy Scheider. Of course, I know him from the French Connection. So we were jogging in Santo Domingo. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. And here goes these trucks go by with these workers, and they have machetes. And up go the machetes, and they're saying something like, they're saluting El Tibidor, and I know I'm messing that up, El Tibidor. We come to find out that Jaws was playing there, and they were saluting the man that killed the shark. They were saluting Roy Scheider. I went back and I told Billy, I said, Billy, you know what? This is the guy that killed the shark. And you know Billy, you know. Yeah, okay.
To me, the flaw in Sorcerer is the casting of Roy Scheider as the lead in the film. He's not bad in the movie. He's not the actor the movie needs. And it's more the fact that the movie needed bigger shoulders to place this type of an epic on. And, you know, when you read the people that Friedkin had originally considered, Steve McQueen or Robert Blake, they would have been perfect. I mean, they would have been absolutely perfect. I think in particularly Robert Blake would have been perfect.
Later, you know, Billy and I have talked about this, you know, would it have been a different movie? It was written for Steve McQueen. And therefore, it was written with very little dialogue. McQueen didn't like dialogue himself, and he was really wonderful at silent bits. Should I have done a pass just for Scheider? Then, you know, when I saw it the last time in Grumman's Chinese, I thought, this is a damn good movie. There's no reason to change anything.
And in a lot of ways, I think it's a more perfect film than the previous two. But it is not a secret that it was a commercial failure at the time. Somehow it shook the system and kind of reinforced the idea that the studios should be concentrating on another kind of entertainment that was probably less challenging to the audience.
When the film was finished, Universal was very, very nervous about the film. First of all, it didn't have any stars in it. It had foreign actors. It opened in foreign languages, in foreign locations. It looked like a European film. It didn't even look like an American film, and still doesn't. Sid Sheinberg and Barry Diller insisted on having this lunch with us to give notes on the film. So Billy called. I was painting my house, so I came in and I had painter's overalls. This is the pre-meeting. He looked at me and he said, I want you to come to the meeting with the executives exactly dressed the way you're dressed now. He gave us direction, really. He said, when they're talking to you, don't look at their eyes, look at their ear, look slightly off, or look at their shoulder when you're talking to them, so that it'll disorient them, because there won't be a way they can engage with your look. So we had the meeting, and Billy drank a tumbler of vodka and fell off the chair, and I said, oh, he does that all the time. And the dialogue could have been written by Ionesco. I mean, it made no sense at all. Every time they suggested something, we said, oh, we'll have to go to Ecuador to do that. And then Sheinberg, tried to bully him, but it was unsuccessful. He had final cut.
Listen, show business, if you're in this business and you make movies within the American commercial system, you do have ups and downs. To last, you have to have hits and you have to have some commercial movies, but you're also going to have failures. It seems to be true of everybody except Spielberg.
I don't care why it didn't perform. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what the movies do. If the title had been less cryptic, if it had been the original title, which was William Friedkin's Dynamite, it might have done a little better, all right? If Steve McQueen had been in it, it might have done a little better, but yeah, but I don't really care about how well it did or not.
The whole story of Hollywood can be expressed in one sentence, which is success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. So there's a cup of coffee in the shot, which happened as we made a cut. That's fine. I'll periodically refer to this, but cheers. Okay.
Filmmaking was always an experimental form, because when the pioneers first got the ability to make a movie, they didn't know how to make a movie. They didn't know how it differed from a stage play, but they were in a position to just try. So if you can't experiment, you can't learn what is possible. I like to say that thinking you can make a good film without risk is like saying you can make a baby without sex. It's not possible. You can't do art without risk. You have to take a chance that it will fail. And by doing that and seeing if it fails or it doesn't fail, that's how we build a common language and a common cinema.
One of the things that I really like about Friedkin's technique in particular is his cinematic set pieces. You can get a sense of how to do a sequence like that yourself if you study his sequences. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about like the car chase in French Connection, or the car chase in To Live and Die in LA, but I also mean like the foot chases.
Who is the greatest director of chase scenes? Buster Keaton, without a doubt. Who is in Buster Keaton's class? Nobody. Nobody can top Buster Keaton. The chase scenes in a silent movie called The General put everything else to shame, I'm sorry to say. And they were actually done the way you see them. The camera simply recorded what Keaton had conceived of, acted in, and directed.
You know, all of the great filmmakers are on the shoulders of previous, you know, everyone's on the shoulder of Murnau or of Eisenstein or of Rossellini. It is a tradition that is handed from one to another.
George Stevens and Billy Wilder, Richard Brooks, Joe Mankiewicz, the great musical directors like Stanley Donen, who was a friend of mine.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
I did seek out the company of the old masters, because they had a lot of information to impart. Their work came out of their life experiences.
These were the giants. Don't talk to me about the 70s.
The film directors of my generation were, for the most part, with the exception of myself, were film student geeks. They all went to film schools. And I never went to a film school. And so I never became part of that film school generation.
Quiet, please. Speed.
10, take 1, A and B camera markers.
I had read somewhere that Fritz Lang was alive. I didn't know he was alive. I think he was 88 at the time. And I called the Directors Guild. I said, look, reach out to him, send him a note or call him and tell him I'd like to meet and talk to him and give him my phone number. And a few days later, I get a call from Fritz Lang. Yeah? Who's this? And I said, well, who are you calling? And he said, is this Friedkin? Yeah, he said, this is Fritz Lang, what do you want? And in a thick German accent. I said, well, I'd love to come and meet you. He said, well, I don't want to meet you. And he hung up the phone.
13, take 1, A and B camera markers. Yes.
A few days later, I get another phone call. Mr. Friedkin? Yes, this is Fritz Lang. People have told me about you, and so if you'd like to come and meet me, here's my address, and you can come by tomorrow, not before 11. So I went over and I met with him, and he was a very interesting man. He couldn't move very well. His mind was still very much intact.
You know that here, in the schools, religion is not taught. How will you teach ethic if not with religion? I'm not a religious man, but ethic you learn only through religion.
Fritz Lang said to me, he had no liking for his German films at all. And I'm talking about Metropolis and M and the films about Dr. Mabuse, which was really about the rise of Hitler and National Socialism.
I personally think that I made my films with a kind of a sleepwalking security. I did things which I thought were right, period. And as I said, I had nobody, no model, which I wanted to be like, you know?
He said, my German films were all worthless. I said, Metropolis, worthless. M, worthless. And he said that they were all cut by somebody else. They were all changed. And he only valued the films he made after he came to America. And none of them compare to Metropolis, as few films do.
I liked Metropolis when I was shooting it, and I told it to you already. I didn't like it when I finished it, because I think the end, the go-between capital brain and hand, the workers, should be the heart was too easy.
Simplistic, you say?
Huh?
You feel now it's too simplistic, or you felt...
Too simple.
One of the great films of all time is Metropolis. One of the great studies of evil is M. The film that made him leave Germany was Dr. Mabuse, because it was about Hitler, and before Hitler came to power. And when Hitler came to power, Lang thought that he was going to be killed.
Goebbels sat behind a desk, very, very far away. I said, Herr Minister, I don't know if you know one thing. My father comes from an old peasant family, 100 years back. My mother was born Catholic, but her parents were Jewish. So again he turned on his charm and said, Mr. Lang, we decide who is an Aryan. I said, thank you.
Fritz Lang was a great filmmaker, almost in a class by himself.
I think your question, all your questions are, is there a strict formula how to make a picture? I don't think so.
Let me make it very clear. Let me demystify all of the bullshit that's written about filmmakers and film. If you want to make a film, you need a combination of ambition, luck, and the grace of God. And to me, the most important of those is the grace of God. You get an opportunity, you get a chance, but you have to go out and try and make your chance. That's it. There's nothing else. I think the best American filmmaker is a woman named Catherine Bigelow. I think she is the best American filmmaker today. She just went out and did it, and she does it great. There's some other young male filmmakers like Damien Chazelle. I think he is possibly the future of American cinema.
That's very, very nice of you.
So what do you think about like this on your shoulders?
I'm inevitably will disappoint him. I first met, actually I remember really well. It was at his house. I drove up to his house to meet him, and it was like, to me it felt like visiting Hollywood royalty, and the house kind of feels that way too. It's like, I remember the gate and pulling up, it's the top of a hill, and he comes out saying, "Hey, Damien, come on in," and treats me to like the most delicious lunch and then shows me around. It was like So amazing. He showed me his office, you know, that's like filled with books about every subject you can imagine, and like his, you know, Oscar certificate from the French Connection, and this painting and this photo of Jean Moreau from his, you know, years with her, and then, you know, old Exorcist manuals and stuff, and it was just, it was kind of everything you'd hope it would be.
These are drawings by Sergei Eisenstein. They were given to me when I received the Life Achievement Award at the Moscow Film Festival. This is from Ivan the Terrible, Eisenstein's watercolor chalk of the main character, and this is from his film called Que Viva Mexico.
He went in all these different directions, you know, and yet I feel like he never made a movie that wasn't a Friedkin movie, you know, that didn't feel like it had his stamp on it in some way.
Who started truly the 70s? Which film started truly the 70s? This decade of ambiguity starts with French Connection, and where does this decade end? With the financial disaster of Heaven's Gate, but it also ends with Cruising, and it ends, you know, with in the bleakest way.
To me, it was a murder mystery set in the world of the S&M clubs, which were, at that time, 1980, a growing phenomenon in the big cities of America. And they were little known to the public that didn't frequent these clubs and places. Even gay people were not very aware of the S&M club. It was a thing unto itself.
Cruising was so authentic. I mean, it took you on a, like, the second level of hell kind of tour of those places in New York. The imagery is, while maybe not as explicit as gay porn, is actually rougher than it's in most gay porn to be found in the late 70s.
I happen to know the head of the mafia in New York who owned these clubs. He was a friend of mine, Matty Iannello. He was known as Matty the Horse. And he was a really nice man, as I knew him. I never saw him do anything wrong. He was exactly like Tony Soprano. And one day I had to ask him a favor, which is, would he allow me to film in his clubs? And he did.
I can tell you factually, what you see on that screen, I saw when I was undercover working there.
Well, despite picketing, graffiti, and vandalism, the movie entitled Cruising was completed, and it will be shown in San Francisco this weekend. The theme is the homosexual lifestyle, but more specifically, however, it's about a series of brutal murders of gays. The gay community has protested, wanting no showing at all of that film. The film's distributors have other ideas.
It was reviled by the gay community at the time because they were worried that this S&M, Tom from Finland kind of sordid basement imagery would marginalize them. They wanted to, no, we're just like people, like everybody else.
Every day in this city, dozens of gay people are beaten up, come close to being murdered.
We're asking for them to withdraw it from circulation from the country.
This film, it not only exaggerates that, it is almost an incitement to go out and murder people.
But I wouldn't say withdraw something from a point of view of censorship, from a point of view of extremely poor taste.
It's a piece of crap.
Cut to 1995, and I have a print of Cruising, and I'm doing a play on Broadway. And, you know, a whole bunch of the people working on the play, as in a lot of theater in New York, are gay. And that time that Cruising represents, that's a world they only heard of. That world, more or less, went away after AIDS. So I had a screening of Cruising, and the whole crew from the play went to see it. And it blew their minds. They loved it.
One day this whole city's gonna explode. Used to be able to play stickball on these streets.
My favorite personal memory, though, of Friedkin was him. It was like on Larchmont Village or something. I bumped into Billy, and I go, "Hey, Billy, how you doing?" We talked for a little bit on the street corner and everything. And then I go, "Hey, I wanted to ask you, so when you were doing Cruising and the gay community was in an uproar about the film, and they were calling you names, and they were picketing in the streets and stuff, and you just keep making your movie, and you keep making it in their neighborhood and everything." I go, "What did you think about all that?" And he goes, "I loved it."
Cruising only interested me as an exotic background for a murder mystery. That's it. I had no political, and I have never on any film I've made had any sense of what the politics of those films are. Other people read things into them, but I don't approach cinema from a political position at all. In fact, I don't trust politics or politicians. Although the mayor of Strasbourg is a very nice man. Mr. Rice. I met Monsieur Rice the other day. Very nice man. I did not realize that Le Marseillaise was written here by Deleuze, right? And he has a picture of Deleuze performing the Marseillaise for the first time in Strasbourg. Le Marseillaise is one of the greatest pieces of music I've ever heard in my life. I would pick up and go to war against my family if they played the Marseillaise. If someone said, "March on your family," I'm there.
Well, how political are his films? The politics comes, I think, from sort of the energy of his independent characters, which is maybe part of the great American, frontier.
He was a larger-than-life character and very impressive when I first met him.
To Live and Die in L.A. was another cop film.
Just another cop movie. Listen, give me a break.
When he says just another cop film, he is being vastly too modest.
To be able to underestimate your own work, to play with it, means that you damn know for sure that your films are different.
It's a terrific film, and it's beautifully well done. And it's certainly not just another cop movie, I'll say that. Or let me have one of those.
Live and Die in LA came out. And even like one of the guys actually saw like a market research screening of To Live and Die in LA. And I even remember like, oh, who's the star of it? And he goes, I don't know, some guy I've never heard of before, but he looks like Dan Marino, the football player.
I had never really done anything. You know, I only done theater. We read a couple of pages and he said, that's it, you got the part.
First time I met Billy personally was for the auditions for To Live and Die in LA. He said, listen, I want to make this movie with totally unknown people. So when people are looking at that screen, they don't have associations with another movie or an actor's career. I want nobodies. I want to get cast nobodies who's looking at me. An actor likes to feel like he has some cachet. To be fair to him, it was very early in my career, and I had made some movies, and I was basically a downtown New York avant-garde theater actor, so I certainly wasn't very well known. So I fit the bill as far as being an unknown.
Willem Dafoe, who, you know, who'd been in a couple movies, but I didn't know him. I was maybe 18 when that movie came out, and he was, you know, he was really electric in it.
How you doing, Ben Jessup?
William Peterson, it's very inspired choice, casting him.
Kite yourself shaving, Mr. Jessup?
Just having those two guys together, seeing those two people for the first time, already you have a movie.
Turn around, right there, asshole!
Killing Bill Peterson, 3/4, halfway through the movie, is a big surprise, and it breaks the convention because he's set up to be your hero. In fact, one of the things that I always remember is when the film came out, and they kept on saying, this is a flawed movie because they broke the rule number 1. You don't kill your hero. And also, your hero is a sleazy guy. Everybody's sleazy. There's nobody to root for. Now, keep in mind, this is many, many years before Tarantino and you know, many worlds where, you know, it's your identification doesn't require there to be a good man that survives and then does the heroic thing. So Billy clearly was ahead of the game on that, and he was willing to play around with that.
That sequence in To Live and Die in LA where they make the money. It's a musical montage. It has style all through it. But it is also sort of recipe for counterfeiting money. I mean, there's real attention to how do you do this.
This is also where Billy was great. He found people that knew how to do this.
We got in trouble for the counterfeiting stuff. The Secret Service felt that we were showing people how to make money, and that wasn't a good idea.
I remember once we were printing money in a remote location out in the desert. We heard some helicopters go overhead. And we all got very tense because what we were doing, technically, I'm not sure how legal it was because we were printing money. But we weren't distributing. We were making it for a specific reason. But there was that moment where we were flirting with the legality of things.
Some of this money got in the wrong hands and started getting passed around. And I wasn't a part of any of that, but I do know that they came at a certain point and confronted a couple of the guys that were working for Billy. It was good, you know? It looked good.
Yeah, these guys that taught me how to print money, I can only say I don't ask questions, I just learn from them. But they know how to print money, so that should tell you something.
The detail of how you do it is very interesting in that movie, and it also says a lot about this character. He's a painter, but he knows how to actually make the money, and it's not a simple thing. It's hard to make money, and I always like just the way he shows it to us.
He loves art. I remember going to his house when we were making the film, and he had a Corot in his bedroom, and I thought, whoa, wow.
All of these are Japanese prints, mostly by the great 19th century Japanese printmaker, Yoshitoshi. There are very few of these prints. I got them all in Kyoto. Yoshitoshi was, in my opinion, the greatest of the Japanese printmakers, and was a favorite of Van Gogh's as well.
He had a huge collection of African art, and it's used in one of the scenes. And I wasn't knowledgeable about African art. So I remember one of the lines that I improvised. I mean, I checked with him, okay? Before I shoot a guy, I say unceremoniously, I look at it and identify it. I say something like 18th century Cameroon.
Yes?
Your taste is in your ass.
No, Jesus, no!
Horrible. I found afterward that that piece of art was from Billy's collection. So I inadvertently, out of ignorance, I must say, I insulted Billy's collection. He didn't tell me that, someone told me that later. His energy, his intelligence, his passion continues. He continues to figure things out and to kind of fight.
Aside from how smart he is this one of the smartest people I'll ever know. And how funny he is, because he makes me laugh more than anybody in the world. He is brave, he's courageous, he's got balls that clank.
Yeah, I'm a cheerleader. I love Billy. He goes on, and he's given us a lot.
I think that as a filmmaker, I probably have a long way to go to reach something that I would admire and respect. As much as I've strived for reality, I don't think that reality is the most important thing in a film. I most admire those filmmakers who have been able to transcend reality and create another world that has nothing to do with linear storytelling, like Antonioni, like Fellini. I like Dario Argento's films, which have nothing to do with reality, but they have a lot to do with mood and texture. So I have not been able on many occasions to transcend reality.
Billy started as a radical filmmaker and remained a radical filmmaker. I would say that today, with his latest two films, Bug and with Killer Joe, he's going through his Japanese period. In the sense where I look at Japanese painting, I see something extremely simple, just a few lines. And with just these few lines, actually, you get an incredible complexity. What I think he understood as a filmmaker is you don't necessarily need to go to Dominican Republic in order to achieve greatness. You actually just can stay on the sound stage. You have your story, you have 2 actors, and this is it.
It's me, Joe Cooper. We're alone now. It was a time right after I'd been doing a bunch of romantic comedies, and I was looking to take on a new path in my career. And nothing had come to me for a while. And the first thing that came to me was the script Killer Joe, written by Tracy Letts, and Bill Friedkin was gonna direct it. I read it, and it is unlike stuff I had been getting offered, for sure. But I also remember reading it and thinking, it made me sick to my stomach. I said, I don't know if I want to be a part of this. I backed off and didn't read it right then, backed off from it, went for a run or something. I came back, had a beer, and read it again. And Tracy Letts' dialogue, the meter of his dialogue and the consistency of it, but it's odd. It clicked, so I heard the music of it, and then all of a sudden I started to find humor and absurdity and truth in it.
I mean, Tracy Letts is really good at sort of, drawing the lives of low-life characters who sort of are struggling to sort of bring themselves back. I think Tracy Letts and Billy are a good team because they're both confronted by the same the kind of evil that sort of lurks in the world.
If you're implicated in this crime, you are not, under any circumstances, to reveal my identity or participation.
Oh, of course. Well, every one of us has a secret life, sometimes a double life. That's interesting.
If you break this rule, you'll be killed.
Like somebody who is married but cheats on his wife, goes off somewhere with a girlfriend in an anonymous way. We all have secrets.
I'm gonna have a baby.
I think him. Now, he made a choice that a lot of people at that time were like, probably what? He saw it clearly. I'll go on to say this. True Detective, the series, True Detective? They came to me for the Marty role that Woody Harrelson played. I read that and said, I know why you're coming to me for this, but I like this other guy, Rustin Cole. And they were like, what? And I go watch Killer Joe. They watched Killer Joe. Next day he said, we got it, you're right. We see why you're right for Rustin Cole. Thank you.
I will be eternally grateful to Billy for believing in me for that role, because I really think it was a poignant turning point in my career where people kind of really thought, wow, she's got some acting chops, and I thank Billy for that.
Gina Gershon, Ashley Judd, Linda Blair, and Ellen Burstyn. Do you find his female
just listen to that list. I'm sorry, I just got like a hot flush. I just got I've never heard it said like that before. That's a pretty amazing list to be a part of. I'm one of the female characters, yeah. I think he doesn't like a female to be simple. No female in his movie is just a bimbo that's there for kind of eye candy, are they? And I've never been interested in playing one of those roles, and I don't think any of those women have ever been interested in playing one of those roles. The roles in his films are just as good for women as they are for men, even if it's less of them. They are just as powerful, sometimes actually, I think, more effective.
Killer Joe, kind of sadistic. He thinks it's a comedy. I didn't know where the comedy relief was, but he took it as a sort of a killer comedy.
Could I direct an opera? I was asked out of the blue by Zubin Mehta, one of the great conductors of music in the world.
We had a dinner in my house, and I was such a great fan of his already, with his past films, that I've seen practically all of them. And during the dinner, I just asked him, I said, would you like to do Wozzeck with me? And he accepted immediately.
I did it because it was a challenge. In opera, the most important element is the composer and the composition. Even though the composer's long dead, like Wagner, Tchaikovsky, Puccini, Verdi, they are the most important people in realizing an opera.
He told me several times, you know, in the opera, first is music.
The second most important element is the conductor, his interpretation of the music. Third, all very close together, not gaps like this, but gaps like this. Third would be the singers, the performers.
Fourth, stage director. Sometimes he changed the order, but music first. Billy has a fantastic, incredible curiosity. So for the opera, when we did Aida, he had many meetings with Egyptologists just to find out what was the body language related at that time with the people, with the aristocracy, with the priests of the Egypt, of the pharaoh. And that gave me the possibility also to look at the music of Verdi from a different angle.
You know, I've done a lot of opera with famous directors, Georgios Strehler, Michael Kakoyannis, and very big Austrian-German directors too. Billy fits in right with them.
The most beautiful sights in the world, the Grand Canal in Venice. Absolutely amazing. How anybody ever thought to build like this on water. Unbelievable to me. I think in my other life, I will be a gondolier like this man here.
In 2017, he went back to his roots of documentary filmmaking with a film based on a real case of exorcism, The Devil and Father Amor.
And I'm very curious to see the reaction of the Italian people, because this will be the first public screening of the film. It is now 11:35 a.m. on the Grand Canal. We're in a lovely taxi, which probably costs $100 to make a 15-minute trip. I had gone to the Vanity Fair Academy Award party, and I was talking to the editor of Vanity Fair, Graydon Carter. He said, when are you going to do another opera? And I told him I had just finished Aida in Torino. And I said, hello. But that I was going to go to Rome. And he said, what for? And I told him I was going to meet Father Amort. And he said, oh, you got to write about this. You have to write an article for Vanity Fair. And so I did. I interviewed Father Amort, and I realized that he knew the Exorcist film very well, and he admired it. And that surprised me. So I asked him if he thought I could ever witness an exorcism. I would have thought no. It's not an entertainment. It's not something that people are invited to witness. But to my amazement, he said, let me think about it. And a couple of days later, I got an email from the head of the Pauline priests, Father Stimamilio, and he wrote and said, Father Amorth invites you to witness an exorcism. I've seen voodoo in Jamaica. I've seen other ceremonies throughout South America, and I have never believed that there was anything authentic about exorcism until I met Father Amorth.
I think in an odd way, he wanted to sort of confront something that he sort of created in fiction, you know, to sort of face it in reality, to sort of see if he was up to the challenge. I don't know.
I think there's always something about all of us that having delved into a certain subject, revisiting it 20, 30, 40 years later, and then seeing remembering where your opinions were and your passions were, and testing them against where you now are in your life, I can see that as being fascinating.
Venice, it's a magical place, a magical city. And that's why when I got a call from the Venice Festival, would you show your film here? I didn't even think twice. I said yes. Others have asked me, and I can't. I'm too tired. I don't want to, but I'm never too tired for Venice. I'm gonna just walk out of the shot. I don't believe in competition between films. I don't allow my films to appear in any competition. I like to show them at film festivals so people who are really interested in film can see them. Filmmaking is not like a tennis match. It's not like a ping pong game. It's not like a track meet. What is a better film? Citizen Kane or Gone with the Wind? Most people would say Gone with the Wind. What is a better film? The Treasure of the Sierra Madre or Singin' in the Rain? I have no idea. I love them both. So a film competition to me is a joke. To me, it's a dirty joke because there is this need that people have to promote something, to have winners and losers. And to judge one film better than another is nothing but a subjective conclusion. But I don't want a bunch of schmucks who call themselves judges sitting in a fucking room saying, oh, this La Dolce Vita is not as good as Batman versus Superman. Fuck them and the horse they rode in on, and the ship that brought them over here, and the dog that walks behind them. Fuck them all, except 9 people. Fuck them all except 6 road guides, 2 pallbearers, and 1 to count cadence.
There you have it. Mic drop. You're literally dropping the mic.
This long, I've never. Thank you.
No, that's my attitude. And then I can't help it.
I'm a real wild one. Wild one.
I've been married to Sherry for, I think it's now 26 years, and all I can tell you is that every day she enriches my life by her very presence. Her degree of compassion and concern for her family, her friends, strangers, total strangers, is amazing to me. My mother had that too. Was it Jesus who said it's better to give than to receive? I don't know. Somebody very astute said that, and I think it's true. It is better to give than to receive. By that I mean friendship and compassion and love. And rich, hot, steaming, delicious, flavorful black coffee.